This is CineBack for the a7C II and a7C-R. It is a device that bolts onto the back of your camera and turns it into more of a boxy cinema style form factor for filming. This thing has so many different features, some of which include a battery plate on the back, either V-mount or gold mount. And there is a switch behind the screen tucked away so it doesn't accidentally get turned on. When you turn it on, the camera is going to power up and it'll send power over these 4 DTAP connectors for powering the camera and all kinds of other gear. We have a spot for our screen that can nicely tuck away and is fully accessible from the side. All the buttons and dials on the entire camera can be accessed, and we just have so many different mounting points all over this thing. So that's a quick look at CineBack. Now let's get into camera and cage compatibility and how to put this thing together. Let's start by talking about the Tilta cage. So first we're going to obviously install it, then we'll set it aside and we'll get our spacer ready for CineBack. Because what's cool about this version of CineBack is it actually works with 7 different cameras. So we have all kinds of adapters we can add to it and get different cages to work, different cameras, and again, all of that is documented on the product page. So to install the Tilta cage with the camera onto CineBack, you're going to need this adapter plate. It's the one that is marked D with the arrow, so we'll set that aside. We're also going to grab 2 of these small silver screws, 2 of the smallest of the black screws, and the second to last large size black screw. We're going to be installing that spacer right here on the top of the bottom plate of CineBack. And you'll see there's a slot right here that is going to line up with this slot right here. So let's go ahead and do that now. We'll just rest it in place. I'll just lightly snug that up. Doesn't need to be crazy locked down and torqued on. And at this point, we can set CineBack down. We'll grab our Tilta cage and a7C II, flip the screen out, and go ahead and insert it in CineBack. It might feel a little too tight at first. That's totally fine. If you need to lift the front of the plate, that's completely normal. And then we're going to be lining up those threads on the cage with these 2 slots on CineBack. Now you can see those 2 threads are ready to accept our screws. We'll take those 2 shorter screws and insert them right on the top. And I'm not going to tighten these down all the way. Next, we'll take our longer screw and insert it in the bottom thread. And this one I will snug most of the way down. We'll flip things back over and we'll close the screen of CineBack here. And if it looks like you need to adjust anything, you can actually loosen the bottom screw and move it forward or back to get this screen parallel with the screen protector here. It looks pretty good, so I'm gonna go ahead and tighten up the top. And the last thing we need to do is prepare this screen area. Again, because this works with so many different cameras, we have several different adapters that can be installed here to correctly space your foam protector by your camera screen. So depending on the cage and the camera you're gonna go with, you're gonna use different parts here. For the a7C II, we're going to install this foam pad and this foam pad spacer, which is very easy to do, and you only need to do it once. So we're going to take out these 2 screws here and here. We'll set those screws aside and we'll take our screen spacer and we'll go ahead and insert it in that little slot and then add the screws right back, just like that. Next, we're going to take the paper off of the back of this little foam pad, and then we'll go ahead and install it right on top of that spacer. So we'll just grab this, line it up, just like that. And now we have a nice foam pad, which is perfectly spaced for a7C, and we're ready to rock and roll with CineBack. So that is a look at installing the Tilta cage with the a7C. Now let's look at using the SmallRig cage. So obviously first we're going to need to install the cage as I have done here. We're gonna go ahead and now flip out the camera screen and install 2 spacers on the inside of the top and the bottom plate of CineBack. These spacers are the E-labeled spacers, and the one that goes on the bottom, you're essentially going to line up this slot of the spacer with this slot on CineBack, and we're gonna use 2 of the included silver screws to mount it in place. Here's a closer shot with that so you can see what that looks like. And then on the top, it is very similar. We have an exact replica, another E spacer with 2 more silver screws, but this time we're getting these 2 round holes lined up with these 2 slots. So that's the top of the camera. With those installed, we can now grab our camera cage and go ahead and slide it in place. If you feel like you need to lift this front top plate a little bit, that's totally normal. And then we're going to line up the threads of the cage with these 2 slots. We'll take our 3 medium-sized black screws and we'll go ahead and install 2 on the top and 1 on the bottom loosely. And I'm on the bottom now, and we're gonna go ahead and tighten this one all the way. Make sure the camera is straight. Then we'll flip things over and go ahead and close the camera screen. And we wanna see what things are looking like with alignment. If you feel like your screen is too cattywampus one way or the other, you can actually loosen this bottom screw and slide the camera forward and back. So it looks like I need to bring the camera just a little further back, something like that. I'll go ahead and snug it up, then flip things over to the top, and I'll go ahead and tighten those final 2 screws. We'll check the screen again, and that looks great. So that is how you can install the SmallRig cage onto CineBack with your a7C or a7CR. Now let's take a second to talk about powering your camera with CineBack. Depending on the CineBack unit you have, you're going to have a battery plate on the back with a power switch, and then it's going to send power from the battery to these 4 D-taps. From those D-taps, there are several ways to power your camera. The first method is to use what is often called a dummy battery or a battery coupler. This very simply is a D-tap cable that connects to a dummy battery, which is not a real battery, it's just a housing, and that goes in your camera. This is super simple. Power goes from here to here. The only thing you need to pay attention to is to make sure this is converting full voltage from your battery to the correct voltage for your camera. So some of these cables don't do that. That's not good. You want to make sure you get a cable that does. We'll include a couple in the product page for this version of CineBack. There are some people out there, however, that don't want to mess with that, and they go with the second route, which is a great one, and that is power delivery. These devices that we're looking at here take the same D-tap connection, and they go to usually some kind of box or device that converts it down to a power delivery over USB-C. This plugs into most modern cameras and is going to give you plenty of juice. You'll have a battery in the grip of the camera, and this is going to charge and help power your camera with that battery. The nice thing about these is they're a little safer because you're converting the voltage down to something nice and low and safe. And if something goes wrong with this cable, you're going to have the power built into the camera's battery that is in the grip. That said, you really want to make sure you get a good power delivery cable and that you know what's coming out of this USB-C connector, because there are cables on the internet that go from D-tap to USB-C that send the full voltage coming from your battery. That could fry your camera. So here I have 2 variants from Condor Blue. One is a D-tap to female USB-Cs. You can use your own cable. One is a inline with a straight cable. You just have to rig them up, plug it in, and plug this end into your camera. Another note on CineBack and this D-tap connector, it is actually reversible. So if you have a camera that is really close to your CineBack and you don't want the cables going toward the grip because you want to be able to hold that camera, for example, here I have the Sony ZV-E1. If I plug in a cable going this way, you can see it's going to run right into the camera handle. It might press buttons, and maybe I don't have a top handle and I actually want my hand to be right here. Well, that's going to be kind of a problem. So this orientation would be very helpful because the cable is going to go backward away from the grip. So now I can still use the grip of the camera. But often you have another grip, or for whatever reason, you don't really care about this stance. Maybe you're more this stance or something else way out here, and you don't mind and would prefer the cables to go toward the camera to keep things nice and tidy on the back of your rig or keep cables from kinking. This plate can be rotated. So what you do is reverse or remove these 4 screws like this, and you can very gently, and I mean gently, pull it up, and now you can rotate it 80 degrees like that and reinsert it in the same spot. Now we can put those 4 screws back and the cables will be going the other direction. And just like that, our cables are now going to go toward the camera. So I can plug this cable in right here. And as you can see, it's going toward the camera, nice and tidy on the back. So you have two options to go with depending on the setup you want to run. And that is how you can get the A7C set up with CineBack. Keep in mind this model works with 7 different Sony cameras, so you can switch and swap and mix and match different bodies with this body. And you can learn more about this on the product page, so be sure to check that out for more information, future updates, and other related products at camerafoundry.com. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in our next product video.